Hi, Mark Harrison here, also known as MH3. Today I'm going to share with you 31 leadership lessons in honor of T1 turning 31. Now, yes, that means I started T1 31 years ago. Originally launched as Trojan Sports Marketing in honor of my high school football teams up in Orillia, Ontario. Yes, we were the Trojans, named after a California university, yet playing football in the snow. We changed the name of the company a few times: Trojan Sports Event Marketing, TrojanOne Integrated Brand Activation. Then we went through a rebrand. We considered a whole bunch of different names. At one point, I'm pretty sure I signed off on Hero as the name of the company. That was more about making our client the hero, not us being the hero. Although you could be forgiven if you thought that's what I intended. And ultimately, we went with T1 because that was the nickname that a lot of our clients had for us. It was just, Trojan 1, easy, T1, you get it. Okay, let's get down to the 31 leadership lessons. There's no science here. This is not artificial intelligence outside of what comes out of my TED. But I do think these are things that I know these are things that I honor, that are important to me, that I'm going to share with you. And there's 31 of them, so of course I'm not going to do them by memory. So if you see me looking over here, it's probably because I'm reading my notes. If you see me looking over here, it's probably because I'm distracted. If you see me looking up here, it's because there was hair up there before I started this business. And it's not been lost due to stress or whatever, because I kind of don't get stressed. Just chronology. So let's go. Number one, wholeheartedly believe that passion is the most important trait that any team member can have. In fact, for me, I'm a bit of a passion snob. If you are not passionate about what you do, if you're not passionate on a stage, when you're not passionate giving a pitch, when you're not passionate just writing an email to a colleague or a Teams note, or even just showing up for a meeting in a wrinkled shirt, then you're kind of not my guy. You're kind of not my person. You're kind of like, we're not in the same tribe. Everybody's looking for this magic sauce of what skill sets do I need to know, etc. Lots of stuff could be taught. I obviously can't teach open heart surgery or how to fly a jet or to build a jet. But, in business, there's a lot that can be taught. I'm not saying you don't need some sort of education. But I will say this. Don't care how smart you are. Certainly don't care how smart you think you are. Don't care about where you've been or what logos are on your resume. Care about your passion. And related to that, number two, I once had a client tell me, you guys, us as an agency, you're the best hour of my day. I said, what do you mean by that? He said, I look forward to that moment in my schedule. I see you blocked it there. And you guys are the best hour of the day. And I think that wasn't about us being the most creative or the smartest or this and that. It's just like a thorough caring about their business, a focus and energy that we want to bring. And I think if you actually said to yourself, who am I meeting with today? How do I make each and every one of my meetings the best hour of their day? Now, I made a comment a second ago about I don't get stressed. One of the little techniques that I learned a little while ago, I'm a pretty disciplined daily journaler, sort of scoring how my day went, what I learned, what successes I had, what failures I had. I score things, I rate things in red, green, yellow. You can figure out what the red versus the green versus the yellow is. But one thing I do every day, which I absolutely love, is I write down 3 successes. Now, they don't have to be won the lottery, did an extra 65 push-ups, and made a successful new hire. But they can be anything where you're like, you know what, we got this idea approved, or I helped somebody solve a problem, or I got an inbound lead. If you write down 3 successes every day, those affirmations will help you understand and bring positivity to your day each and every day. And I think that is just like, I feel like these first 3 are all connected. And number 4 is connected in a different way. And people that have worked with me have heard this forever. Now you got to remember, when I started working, we used to carry briefcases. When we had art boards, we had these big black, artboard cases. They were like 4 feet by 5 feet. You'd lug them in the meetings and set up the chloroplast ideas. But inside those briefcases was always the presentation deck. If we were meeting somewhere and we're talking to a client about, hey, we're going to invent coasters for you. And if the client had briefed you on coasters, or your boss had briefed you on coasters, or you're in the business of mergers and acquisitions and you're going to go buy a company, you've got an offer, or whatever it is, a legal defense, I don't care, a resume, always have one more deck than you need. What do I mean by that? So let's imagine you're going for a job interview. The job interview is, I'm going to use a sports analogy because it's easy, and I'm literally making this up as we go. The job interview is to be the general manager of this new women's pro volleyball team. And so you've thought about how you're going to build your roster, how you're going to manage salary cap if there is, how you're going to look on the waiver wire, what you're going to draft, what type of team you want to have. A lot of times this ends up being done in conjunction with other staff members, obviously like the coach. And you go in that meeting and all of a sudden they say, we really like your philosophy around building a team and all the rest of it. Do you have any experience as a coach? Because we're actually thinking about going in a different direction in general manager, but we really like you for the coach. Do you have your coach resume in your proverbial briefcase, whether it be physical or digital, ready to go? You thought you were going to a meeting to be the general manager, and they said, we want you to be the coach. Switching tacks. When I wrote number 5, which was all about this concept of the earlier you share bad news with people, the more likely you will be forgiven. I also toyed with this idea of, I had a mentor who told me a lot to always be honest, and I feel like every time I tell people that, they kind of go, well, duh. So I'm actually going to save the honesty one because I think it probably needs its own blog someday. But think about it. We all get bad news, or we get hints of bad news, or we get suspicions of bad news, or we get actual numbers that are sharing with us bad news. The earlier you share the bad news, the more likely you will be forgiven. Even mathematically, think about it this way. The earlier you share, the more runway you have, and if time heals all wounds, then obviously you are aiding that recovery window by doing that. So the earlier you share bad news, the more likely you'll be forgiven. And then on number 6 is about the truth. And I wrote here, don't be afraid of the truth. The facts are the facts. So what do I mean by that? If you've got a sales plan, it's not hitting its targets. If you've got a media plan, it's not hitting its targets. You've got a revenue plan, it's not hitting its targets. You've got a hiring plan, you're not hitting your targets. Deal with the facts. The facts are the truth. Go to your boss, go to your colleagues and say, look, we're at 14%, we're at 40%, we're at 82%, but we're not at 100 or 110%. The facts are your friend. That took me a long time to learn. Switching gears here a little bit, we're going to go into habits. Number 7 is routines eliminate low-value work for leaders or busy work. What do I mean by that? Again, simple example. When I wrote my first book, it's over there in the stack. Maybe it isn't actually, my kids are. I read a book about writing books. So before I wrote my first book, I read a book about writing books. And that book told me the best way to write is to find the same chair, the same table, the same food, the same drink, the same time slot every day. 5 days a week is fine, or if you want to write